Hello, everybody. Welcome back. So, those of you that are returning, thank you guys so much for coming back. Those of you that are new and this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. So, as you know, or some of you know, we've been covering the Sebastian Rogers case and all that case entails. Um, so, there's a couple of things that I want to point out in these two interviews. So we're going to get into that because to me, just the math isn't mathing. Everything doesn't add up. It seems that details were added in after the fact, um, which is never really a good thing. So let's get all into that. Before we get started, I'm going to ask you guys to please do me a favor and hit that like button. And if you have not already done so, make sure you subscribe to the channel. All right, so the first thing we're going to take a look at is a couple of sections in the very first time that the Proudfoots spoke out, which was March 7th. So 8 days after Sebastian had just vanished. All right, so I want to talk about a little section of this here. Now, this was, again, their first interview with WSMV4. Oh, I'm sorry, this was March 5th, not March 7th.
That night.
We were out and about that day. We were having a really good weekend. We got home.
Now, I find it really interesting that in the very first time they speak out, they're asked about the day before. Well, Katie is asked because Chris wasn't home, right? Right. So, they ask her. So, tell me about the day. That day, the day he went missing, Sunday, right? Sunday. Tell me about the day. And she starts off with saying, "Just we had a really good weekend," and then she says, "We came home." So, in this very first time that they're speaking out in this interview, she doesn't even mention picking up the niece, going to BJ's, going to the bowling alley, going out to dinner. She starts out with just saying, "We came home." Now, I'm going to tell you why that's pretty interesting, but let's just see a section of this.
We were out and about that day. We were having a really good weekend. We got home. Everything was pretty normal. He was playing in his room. Um, when I told him to go to bed, he did. He said, "Good night, Mom. I love you." Said good night to his puppies. A little bit later, I wound up going to bed, and when I woke him up for school, he wasn't there.
Okay. You know, what she also doesn't mention is hearing in this very first interview is hearing the thud or the loud noise coming from his room where she says she told him to go to bed at 9 o'clock and he went to bed. And then next thing you know, in the very next interview she does, she's like, "Oh, well, at 10 o'clock, I heard a noise and coming from his room. And I just yelled to him, 'I don't care what you're doing in there, but go to bed.'" None of this is mentioned in the first interview. And then if you go to the second interview with Chronicles of Olivia, which we'll go because I want to show you a couple sections of that interview too. But she doesn't she doesn't mention any of this in the first interview. But in the second interview, she's got all kinds of details that were never mentioned in the beginning. Now, I wonder what the reason is for that. And I wonder if this was her original story she told that, we came home, I told him to go to bed, he went to bed, I went to bed later. And then she says, I woke him up for school and he wasn't there. And I wonder if cops were like, okay, well, because she doesn't mention also in this interview, she does not mention that she gets in her car, drives around, drives down by the school. She doesn't mention any of that in this first interview. So I kind of wonder if cops were like, okay, well, we have your car GPS, driving around town, but you didn't tell us that in the beginning. So then she had to go, okay, well, now I need to, let's get some details out there. Let's say this is why. This is why. Oh, I didn't mention that because I was so distraught. You know what I'm saying? So let's just listen.
A little bit later, I wound up going to bed, and when I woke him up for school, he wasn't there.
So in your mind, that's usually around what time? When do you normally wake him up? Around 6 o'clock?
6.
So were you instantly thinking something's wrong, or were you like, he may just be already in the shower, in the living room?
I took a second and walked through the house looking for him in case he'd gotten up and was trying to get breakfast or something, because he did that sometimes.
And the one thing I did want to say about that is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I did see a layout of the house. And wouldn't you have to walk through the kitchen, or at least by the kitchen, to go into Sebastian's room? Because I didn't see another way around, but I really could have missed it. I didn't, really examine it that well. But then she would have known that he wasn't in the kitchen getting breakfast or getting snacks.
About 3 minutes in, give or take, I was on the phone with my husband. I said, I can't find him. He said, what do you mean you can't find him? I said, he's not in the house.
And so at that point, is that when you call 911, or what's going through your mind?
While we were on the phone, and I was like, is he on the other side of the bed? The normal places he may be in the house, and he wasn't. So I was like, okay, well, hold on a minute. And immediately after that, we called the sheriff's department and made the report.
I ran all over the house, outside, inside. I looked in every closet.
Within minutes they were here.
See, no mention of her getting in the car, driving down to the school, driving around the neighborhood. None of that. Why would you not mention that in the very first time you speak out in your very first interview with the news? Why would you not go tell them exactly what happened, exactly what you did? Because she done left out the whole day of Sunday. She left out getting in her car after she knew Sebastian was missing and driving around the neighborhood. None of that was mentioned. And the only thing I can think of is that the cops, this is the story that was told to the cops, and the cops were like, well, wait a minute. Once they looked into her car GPS, well, we got your car GPS going around town, but you didn't mention that. So then it all had to, then all this stuff had to come out.
Responded within minutes, and here we go.
So you said you were on the
And
phone.
she did say that she ran all over the house, all over the inside of the house, all over the outside of the house.
With her. So you were not home.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I was.
And sorry, but I want to point this out, and I'll point it out again in the next interview on Chronicles of Olivia. Because she says in this interview, okay, I ran around the house. I ran all around the outside of the house. And at this time, she's on the phone with Chris, right? In the interview with Chronicles of Olivia, she goes, okay, well, I'm in my car. I'm driving all around. I'm driving down by the school. And he's already, and then, okay, we'll get into all that. But she ends up saying, well, I went to run. Chris goes, okay, get back to the house. So I ran back, and then she stopped herself, and she was like, well, I drove back. So it really does make you wonder, and it's so completely understandable why people are like, okay, well, her story's changed so much. I mean, it's crazy. So let's get back into this.
I was at work. I'm a tower crane operator, and I was working in Memphis at the St. Jude project. So it's, I have an earpiece in that talks to my phone. I have another earpiece in that does the radios. So when she was talking to me, I was like, what? I was confused. We talked about where he could possibly be. And then we went from there and led to calling the cops. And here we are now.
And within minutes, they're there at the home.
Yes, ma'am.
It was rapid fire. They had cars.
They
They had
lied
cars from here down to the
main road.
road, as far as I could tell.
So, what's going through both of your minds? I mean, are we panicking? Is it this, oh, I think he's probably at a neighbor's house? Or what are you thinking?
My son doesn't run. He's not a runner. He's
There's answers to questions that have no answers, or questions with no answers right now that we are searching for desperately. And we just don't have that.
Is there anything that happened that day that you think back and there might have been a reason he was possibly upset or something outside that could have enticed him to go outside? Was there anything that came to mind?
We've been combing over that day and even the weeks before he left, and I hadn't been able to figure it out. He's that morning he was laughing, he was joking. Everyone we were around that day agreed that he seemed like he was in a good mood. He was behaving. It'd make more sense if we'd been fighting.
Now, knowing what we know now, we now know that at some point, so when this interview was being done, when Sebastian went missing, we know that at some point within the last month, CPS had been called because Chris hit him with a belt. We went over in a past video. So, for them to sit there and say, well, I mean, there's no reason, like he would have no reason to run away. He would have no reason to leave there. I just don't understand this. He wasn't in any trouble, or he hadn't been in any trouble, but we know that he was in trouble because of Chris coming out later on and telling us in his own words that, there was just a CPS situation going on at that house.
Or he'd been in trouble, but he hasn't been in trouble. So, I mean, the $1 million
Something funny.
question, why did he go? And the other $1 million question is how.
What about
Okay. Now I want to play this end section right here.
was able to watch this, and maybe he's watching this as it airs. And if he is, what do you want to say to Sebastian? What do you want him to hear from you right now?
Oh gosh, that we love you so much, and we want you to come home, and you're not in trouble.
I guarantee you he is loved. And trust me, the open arms are waiting for him to come home. From every parent to every family members to probably everyone in the community. But there's no matter.
I mean, I understand that everybody, deals with emotion differently, and everybody has their own way of, everyone is different. And that's true. But I feel like you can clearly tell when they either have a connection with someone or they don't have that connection with someone. And you can just tell that when Chris speaks, I mean, we're right now, like 8 days after he went missing. And there's just no emotion that comes from this man.
Malice, we just want our boy home. Badly. But
That mama's heart, I know it's daddy's too, but I feel like there's always that extra special bond. Can you walk us through what you're thinking right now?
Well, there's
I
supposed
just
to
want
be.
my baby to be okay. don't know where he's at. I don't know where he's at.
And let's talk about the community, because I want you all to know, even my church body, I mean, we're all praying. We're all
Okay. Now, let me play devil's advocate for about 2 seconds here, okay? Now, let's just say that Chris and Katie have absolutely nothing to do with Sebastian going missing that night. Let's say they have absolutely no idea, and literally, or let's say Katie has absolutely no idea, and Sebastian, for all she knows, Sebastian did just legit get up and, I mean, he just vanished into thin air. We know Chris was at, a poker game, high stakes poker game. So let's for a second pretend that the family has absolutely nothing to do with this. Could Chris have lost money? Could he have owed somebody money? Does he have a gambling problem? Because when you get into these high stake poker games, I mean, family members go missing. I mean, it does happen. So is that a possibility? I don't know, but I wonder if that was investigated at all. Just trying to look at it from, I don't have a biased perspective, but looking at it from an unbiased view, is that a possibility? I just wanted to bring that up because, this talk of poker games and, they have decent money. They have, so that could be a possibility for a kid to just disappear and the mother actually legitimately have no idea what happened to him. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying, is that a possibility? All right. Now, let me do this real quick. All right. So again, that interview was the first interview, the first time they spoke out. Now, I'm going to point out a few things in this interview that I found quite interesting and quite disturbing. And then we'll go from there. So, again, this was on Chronicles of Olivia.
Through that day, Sunday, the day before he went missing,
And I also really want you to pay attention to her body language during this whole thing.
Got up, and fun fact, I made breakfast that morning.
Isn't that weird that like there's just another extra detail that she wanted to throw in? She's like, okay, so I got up, and fun fact, I made breakfast that morning. I don't know, just seemed very like she's got it, like she's just all of a sudden from that interview to this one, the amount of detail that was put into Sunday is completely insane.
We had a good time. We were laughing, we were joking. He talked to family on the phone during breakfast to brag.
And that's another thing that she says he talked to family on the phone during breakfast to brag. To brag about what? Because the day's just starting. What's to brag about what? She never says what.
We went and picked up our niece.
Yeah.
Also very odd, where she starts her day, well, we went to pick up our niece, and she, gestures to Chris like verifying that, which he couldn't do because he wasn't there, allegedly.
Yeah, I got a call and asked if I could go and pick her up, and I did. And so we went and did that. We went to BJ's. Had a good time there. He ate a colossal popcorn.
And now, if you notice this, this is important too. If you notice her face every time she talks about a place, going to a place or something with Sebastian, she's like, okay, we went to BJ's. He got this, and her eyes get all big, this colossal popcorn. And then in a few minutes, she talks about, well, we had to go home and put away all the stuff we got at BJ's because we had to get snacks because he's 15, and her eyes get big again. And she's like, snacks. So, and he talks about how Sebastian is a bottomless pit, hungry all the time. So I wonder if they, Chris has said himself, he's runs a very strict household. I wonder if because they've talked about him going out and trying to sneak food. Like, I wonder if they give him you know what I mean? Like, they limit the amount of food that he can have, or they limit the amount of what they give him. It just seems they're that type of way.
Came home to put.
One more thing. I want you guys to pay attention to the body language, because you see how pretty much relaxed she is right now, telling these details about this story that she had to, remember all these things throughout the day. And it all changes after she slips up, makes a mistake, and her body language completely changes.
Groceries away because we bought snacks because he's 15 and snacks. We went to the bowling alley, and then from there we went to dinner.
Well, we're missing a part of the day. We're missing something here, because the day started, they went to go pick up the niece. Then they went to BJ's. Then they went to, then they came home, put the stuff away. Then they went to the bowling alley, and then they went to dinner. But only her and Sebastian went to dinner. So did they take the niece home? Did she take the niece home? Did somebody come over and pick up the niece? Did she drop the niece off somewhere? Like, where did the niece go? Because the niece was not on camera with them at dinner.
Came home. He took out the trash because that's his chore. He takes the can to the end of the driveway. About 9 o'clock, told him to go to bed. And he come out of his room where he was playing, and he said, "All right, good night, Mama. Good night, puppies. I love you." And went to bed. He was doing something in his room because about an hour later I heard some noise, and I was like, "I don't care what you're doing in there, but go to sleep."
See, that's a new detail. That was not ever mentioned. None of this was ever mentioned in that first interview. She literally started the first interview with, okay, we came home. Never talked about what they had done previously in the day. Never mentioned a thud coming from his room. Never mentioned none of that. Now, what is the reason for that? That, to me, something's not right.
And about midnight, I got up and I went to bed. And 6 o'clock, I went to wake him up for school Monday morning. And that's when he wasn't here.
What was going through your mind at that point? Like, what were the feelings that you were feeling?
To censor myself. Holy freaking crap, this can't be happening. Where is my kid?
That's, come on. Like, that is a weird. So somebody asks you, what were you thinking at that moment when you couldn't find your child? And her first thing is to censor myself. What parent is going to be thinking like that? Censor yourself for what? Because if there's any a time to be swearing and cussing and dropping the F-bomb, that's at the time you realize your kid is missing and you have no idea what happened to him, that would be the time. So I just thought it was very weird that, she was asked, well, I mean, what was going through your mind? And her first thing was to censor myself.
Choice words were used. Like, where the F is he, I had looked through the house for him because it was typical for him to get up and come and rummage for snacks and things like that. Choice words were used. Like, where the F is he, I had looked.
See, she started to say, I had called my what? Mother-in-law? Is she the one that called Chris's mom? She started to say, I called my, and then stops herself.
Choice words were used. Like, where the F is he, I had looked through the house for him because it was typical for him to get up and
Morgan on it.
come and rummage for snacks and things like that. And he likes to dip behind the, walls and watch, and then he comes out after I come back and he likes to scare me. But after I looked, and I mean,
No, here's where she talks about driving. Okay, just watch closely.
mind you, all of this took place in like 1 minute flat. But I didn't see him in his room. I looked all over. I ran through the whole house. I looked out all the doors and windows, and I was like hollering his name. And I picked up the phone and I called my husband and I said, I can't find him. And he said, what do you mean? I said, he's not in this effing house. I can't find our son. And I jumped in my car and I drove around the neighborhood and I drove over by the school, and he's already at this.
Okay. Now we're going to talk about this section right here. So she says, I got in my car, or I told him I couldn't find him. I got in my car. I drove around the neighborhood, drove down by the school. Very, very odd to me that none of that she didn't mention that in the first interview, getting in her car and driving around. Now, why would you not mention that? Now, I had released a short yesterday about what she says right here, because she does slip up again. She says, and watch her hands. Watch this hand.
Car and I drove around the neighborhood and I drove over by the school, and he's already.
I drove around the neighborhood, drove down by the school, and he's already. I found that interesting because, I mean, I do feel like he's alive somewhere out there. But I think I know a lot of times when someone is not being truthful, their subconscious comes out and releases things in different ways. So I just found it very interesting that she was like, he's already, and makes that line across her neck. I don't know. Maybe it's just me.
At this point, I was hysterical, and I was, and I jumped in my car and I drove around the neighborhood and I drove over by the school, and he's already at this point, I was hysterical.
And right there, she knew right then and there that she screwed up, because she sits up in her chair, she gets on the edge of her seat, and then she really starts to fumble her words. She lost track of where she was. Her mind is going, and you'll hear Chris cough. And it's almost as like, okay, finish up what you're saying because you're done. You know what I mean?
Over by the school, and he's already
notice how her body
I was,
language
hysterical, and I was crying, I was
changed.
screaming, and he was like,
You just lost it all.
he three-wayed law enforcement.
So now she's saying that after this, after she's gotten her car, she's drove down by the school. Now he's three-waying law enforcement.
And was telling them like our son is missing and we don't know what's going on. And he was like, go back to the house. They're on their way. And I ran back, drove.
See, there she goes. She goes, I ran back to the house. Now, if you go back to that first interview, she says that I looked all around the house. I looked all around the outside of the house. She was running all over the property. And here she says, well, I was running, or I ran back to the house, or I drove back to the house. So which is it, lady? Did you get in your car and drive around the neighborhood and drive down by the school, or didn't you?
Back to the house and three-wayed. He three-wayed law enforcement.
Once she screwed up and said he's already, she literally lost track of everything she was going to say. She knew she just screwed up there, and that's it. She immediately says, okay, he three-wayed the police, and now here we are. Like, she couldn't even finish telling the story because she knew she screwed up so bad.
Three-wayed. He three-wayed long car, and I drove around the neighborhood, and I drove over by the school, and he's already, like, at this point, I was, like, hysterical, and I was crying, I was screaming, and he was like, three-wayed. He three-wayed law enforcement. And was telling them like our son is missing and we don't know what's going on. And he was like, go back to the house. They're on their way. And I ran back, drove back to the house. And
and that's it. And here we are. So I do find that quite interesting. All right, now. So one thing that I did have a question of is about the missing poster, because on the missing poster it says last seen on Stafford Court near Beach High School. Or I'm sorry, near Beach High School on Stafford Court. But the story is that Katie put him to bed and he just vanished in the middle of the night at some point. So I'm curious about why the poster says that he was seen on the 26th on Stafford Court if he was never caught on video or anything like that. Is that the? But I've also heard mumblings from that Jennifer FBI lady on X that Sebastian was possibly seen in Katie's dash cam when they returned home that night, proving that he did return home. So if somebody can clear up this whole sighting thing for me, that'd be great. The next thing that I did want to bring up is, you know how in the first video she says, I ran around the house, I ran all over the outside of the house, ran all over the property, couldn't find him. And then in the second one, she doesn't mention running around the outside of the property. She just mentions getting in her car and driving around the neighborhood. So there, I know I had heard someone say something about, could Katie have possibly put on Sebastian's shoes, walked around the neighborhood, and that's why they're so, and thinking that it was going to make the dogs pick up a scent. But it seems that it did not work because the dogs never picked up on a scent from Sebastian. So I don't know, but I did want to put that out there just because, I mean, nothing has been taken off the table at this point, according to law enforcement. So everything is fair game. So they're obviously trying to figure out what in the hell actually happened here. But just a lot, I mean, just from, March 5th to when she did that interview with the news, when they did that interview with the news lady that I just showed, and between this interview with Chronicles of Olivia, which is 20 days. This is 20 days after he's gone missing. And the first interview was 7 or 8 days after he's gone missing. So just in this short period of time, look how much changed in the story. I mean, it just doesn't add up. The math is not mathing. And people wonder why all this suspicion is being thrown at these two.
Possible thing that could have happened, but is there any theory that you can talk about that you think?
What I can tell you is, with all law enforcement, with everybody that's involved, there's nothing that's been eliminated. Everything is on the table. Everything is being looked at from every possible aspect.
Everything from he got out and walked away and was outside of the search radius before we started searching to
Interesting that was the first thing that she said, that the first thing she says is that he was out of the search radius, out of the whole search radius before they even knew he was missing. I just think that that's a very interesting thing to say for the first, you know what I mean?
the worst. And
To me,
And
I mean, that's
currently
that's
where we're
bad.
at. I mean, it's
really try not to go down that road because we're
well,
gonna find him.
speculating causes problems.
Okay.
We just know he's out there somewhere.
We just know that he is out there somewhere. I don't know, guys. I'm being as honest as I can be and giving you what I'm getting from these two interviews. And for everything to change so drastically within a 10-day period, is it makes no sense. And to me, it's suspicious. I'm not gonna lie, it is suspicious. Now we know that Seth was at work that night. He works the overnight shift. He is seen on camera at work. Katie has taken a polygraph, and from what I can gather, it came back inconclusive. But there's talk that it has something to do with whatever medication she was on, Xanax. I don't know, something like that. I have no idea if that will change your test or not. But and as far as we know, Chris has not taken a polygraph because he was quote unquote not there, and they could verify that his truck and his phone were in Memphis at the time. I mean, he's not seen on camera anywhere, but his phone and his truck were in Memphis. So what happened to Sebastian Rogers? How does a child just poof vanish? It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. Where is Sebastian? That's the $1 million question. That's what everybody wants to know. What happened to him? How did he just vanish? How did no scents were picked up outside of the house? He was not seen on camera, on any ring camera, on any security camera, in the neighborhood, leaving the neighborhood. I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. This kid just vanished without a trace. Okay. I am going to end this one here. I do have another video lined up and ready to go. But there's just a couple, I want to cross a couple I's and, or dot a couple I's and cross a couple T's before I am officially ready to premiere the video. So let me hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. I wanted to point those few things out. I just hope that he is found safe and alive. All right, let me hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. Please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button if you have not done so already. And share this video. If you want to do anything else, you want to donate to the channel, help keep this content coming, the links are all down in the description below. I love you guys. Stay strong, stay healthy, stay safe. Keep asking those hard questions. Keep spreading that light. And I will see you all next time.